This is AIM Agenda. With me this morning now, Liberal frontbencher Steve Ciobo, Labor frontbencher Brendan O'Connor. Steve, your colleagues in South Australia, Liberal colleagues, concerned about the implications of a Japanese successful bid. Do you understand those concerns?
Well, look, understandably, there's concern in South Australia. I mean, the South Australian state government has done an appalling job at job creation. The federal coalition is doing a lot to focus on job creation. And front and centre of that, of course, is our efforts with respect to what we're going to do to ensure Australia's on a strong footing. I mean, we saw Labor do absolutely nothing, not a single thing for 6 years. We saw Labor sit on their hands, not take a decision. The coalition's going to fix the mess.
Well, yeah, that's true, isn't it, Brendan O'Connor? That the whole talk of a valley of death in terms of employment is because of the delay here.
Well, this is another. I mean, our fear is this is another captain's pick. You know, Tony Abbott seems to have more captain's picks than Steve Waugh ever did. I mean, he's had an arrangement with the Prime Minister of Japan. He's sought to enter into an arrangement with that country, which would mean that jobs would be taken offshore. Now, for strategic reasons, for employment reasons, and for ensuring skills in our labour market, we have to have the submarines built predominantly in Australia and maintained in Australia, and not to do that would decimate the manufacturing industry. I mean, this government's already presided over the death of the car industry. It's about to kill the shipping industry, the shipbuilding industry I should say, if it's not resolved. But the problem is we know that Tony Abbott has had a secret deal with the Prime Minister of Japan, and he's trying to find his way through it by having a sham evaluation process. And that's why his government members in South Australia are so nervous. I mean, we've got very high unemployment in South Australia, and yet the government turns its back on that state.
All right, Steve Ciobo, your response to that?
Well, I think Brendan's obviously doing his best to win an Oscar for the best performance because, frankly, after Labor sat there for 6 years and didn't take a single decision, now all of a sudden Brendan's crying about concern about this and concern about that. I mean, for goodness sake, mate, you were part of a government that absolutely kicked the can down the road, didn't do a thing for 6 years, and now you jump on national TV and you say, oh, we're so concerned, Labor's so motivated, Labor's so focused. Mate, the fact is your actions speak much louder than your words, and you guys did nothing.
You're drop kicking the can
Brendan,
over
just
to
quickly.
Japan. Well,
Anyway, just
saying,
quickly, Brendan,
clearly the real fear here is the Prime Minister's already made an undertaking to Japan, and Japan has no interest in building the submarines in South Australia. That's the problem here, and that's why you're seeing a revolt within the Liberal Party.
Let's look at the Fairfax Ipsos poll on national security. Steve Ciobo, it looks like 75% of those surveyed support stripping citizenship off sole Australian nationals, those with the prospect of securing citizenship through another country. They want you to go further.
Well, let's be clear. The Australian community is speaking with almost one voice. They're saying we will not tolerate those that want to engage in terrorism activity. If you claim to be an Australian and you want to engage in terrorist activity or support terrorist activity, then Australians collectively are saying we don't want you in the country. It's a point that I've made before. It's a point that the government is reiterating. We're very focused about sending a very clear signal here. If you think that you can be an Australian citizen and yet be a supporter or sympathiser with terrorism, we don't want you, you're not Australian, and frankly what Australians are saying loud and clear is we don't even want you in the country.
And are you saying, but your personal view is you want the government to go further and to strip citizenship off these sole nationals as well who are engaged or supporting terrorism?
What the poll's making very clear is that that's what Australians are after. We have no tolerance for those that want to engage in terrorist activity in this country. It is completely against what Australians are about and what this nation is about. It runs completely contrary to our values. As far as I'm concerned, and I've said it for a long time, if someone's a dual citizen, they should lose their Australian citizenship. What this polling is showing is that Australians also take the view that if someone is an Australian citizen but has the opportunity to get citizenship with another country, well, they should exercise that opportunity, go take up that citizenship somewhere else, and they shouldn't stay an Australian citizen.
It's an overwhelming number there, Brendan O'Connor.
It is. I mean, but you know, you can't allow surveys and polls to dictate public policy. But we support the government in stripping citizenship from dual citizens. We also believe that Australia is a good global citizen and has to work with countries to defeat terrorism, but at the same time we have to be mindful of not rendering people stateless. So yes, we should be very, very strong and firm against people acting against the interests of this nation, and we'll work with the government. And insofar as any legislation that might come forward around citizenship, we'll look at the detail because we need to see exactly what's being put forward. But we have no time for this. We'll work closely with the government, as we do on all national security matters. We want to be united in ensuring that people who want to endanger our citizens or our nation we respond properly to. But we need to look at the detail. And look, the government does brief the opposition on these matters, and I'm sure we'll be briefed on this particular issue if there's any further development in this area.
And I guess just finally, Steve Chabot, to you on this, the key is to ensure that it stacks up in constitutional terms, that it wouldn't be thrown out eventually by the High Court, which was certainly the fear in the first place when raised by several members of the Cabinet.
Well, look, I mean, of course, it almost goes without saying that laws need to be constitutional, Kieran. They need to, of course, make sure that they can withstand any test before the courts. But, you know, governments do this quite successfully. We are able to put in place laws that are consistent with the constitutional obligation. To me, this is a straightforward matter. Australians, as I said, are almost speaking with one united voice. The vast majority of Australians are saying this. If you want to engage in terrorism activity, if you want to be a terrorism sympathiser, that runs completely contrary to Australian values and Australian sense of self. If that's the case and you can be in another country, a citizen somewhere else, go be a citizen somewhere else. We don't want you in Australia.
We're out of time, gents. Steve Chabot, Brendan O'Connor.
Sure.
Just quickly, Brendan, just quickly, yep.
No, I just going to say, I think that's the issue. It needs to be done so that we can, so it's not to be successfully challenged in the courts, and that's why it's important to look at the detail.
All right, fellas, have a good day. Appreciate it. Quick break on AIM Agenda. Back in just a moment.